This morning, something happened that wasn't supposed to happen. The US dollar, once the most trusted currency in the world, opened 70% lower. Overnight, its value collapsed. Banks froze withdrawals. ATMs went dark. Pensioners across America woke up to find their savings gone. Some say it's a glitch. It's not. Global markets are in freefall. Countries are dumping dollars. The world is turning to new currencies, digital, decentralized, foreign. And the question no one wants to ask is finally here. What if the dollar never recovers? We thought this couldn't happen, but history says otherwise. This is more than a financial crash. This is a shift in power, in trust, in how the world works. And if you think your money's safe, think again. Hit like, subscribe, and let's go. For decades, the US dollar has been more than just currency. It's been the heartbeat of global trade, the symbol of stability, the bedrock of retirement funds, international contracts, and national reserves. Nearly 60% of the world's foreign currency reserves are held in dollars. Oil is priced in dollars. Nations borrow and repay in dollars. It's not just money, it's power, trust, a system that has quietly governed the modern world. But systems are fragile. In 2024, the US crossed $34 trillion in national debt and continues adding billions daily. Major economies have begun hedging: China, Russia, even US allies, diversifying away from the dollar. Digital currencies are rising. Central bank digital coins, cryptos. The very definition of money is shifting under our feet. At the same time, geopolitical tensions are growing. Wars, sanctions, trade fractures. The world isn't just changing, it's unraveling. And through it all, one question looms larger every year. What happens if the world decides the dollar is no longer safe? For now, most people still swipe their cards, receive paychecks, plan their retirements, believing the system will hold. Believing someone, somewhere, has control. But behind closed doors, economists warn, it's not a question of if, but when. This is where the real story begins. The cracks are already visible. You just have to know where to look. It didn't start overnight. The roots of this collapse stretch back decades, to moments that felt small at the time, but now look like warning signs we refuse to see. After World War II, the Bretton Woods Agreement crowned the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. Other nations tied their money to the dollar, and the dollar to gold. Trust was built, because value was real. But in 1971, that gold backing vanished. The US unpegged the dollar from gold, and suddenly, value became belief. From that moment on, the dollar thrived not because of what it was, but because the world believed it would always be stable, always be honored. That belief powered empires. But every empire carries a cost. Wars were waged, debt exploded, printing money became normal. From the 1980s to now, the US printed trillions, not backed by labor, or gold, or goods. Just faith. And for a while, it worked. The system kept spinning. But under the surface, foreign governments began to worry. China slowly reduced its dollar holdings. Smaller nations turned to alternative trade. And after each financial crisis, 2008, 2020, cracks appeared in the illusion. Today, the US spends more than it earns. It borrows to pay interest on previous debt. The dollar is still strong, but only because nothing better has replaced it. Yet, the danger isn't that the world will suddenly hate the dollar. The danger is that it will quietly stop needing it. And when that happens, the fall will feel instant. But in truth, we've been falling for years. Look closer, and you'll see the ground is already shifting. In 2001, nearly 75% of global reserves were held in US dollars. Today, just above 58% and falling steadily. China and Russia now settle energy trades in yuan and rubles. India is experimenting with digital rupee exchanges. Even US allies like France and Brazil have started buying oil without using dollars. Quiet moves. But together, they form a pattern. And that pattern tells one story. The world is preparing for life without the dollar. You might think, this won't affect me. But it already has. Every product you buy, every investment you hold, every pension payment is tied to the dollar's credibility. If that credibility vanishes, prices soar. Imports collapse. Interest rates spike. Retirement funds shrink overnight. Inflation isn't a theory, it's a shadow already on your doorstep. In 2022 alone, the dollar lost over 15% of its purchasing power. And while the headlines say recovery, the reality is clear. Your money buys less, your future costs more, and no one is fixing the system. Meanwhile, America's debt climbs by $1 trillion every 100 days. That's not sustainable. That's a countdown. Economists whisper what politicians won't say aloud. The dollar's dominance is on a timer, and no one knows exactly when it runs out. But one morning, just like that, the world may wake up and decide, enough. And when that happens, it won't just be a currency crash. It will be a global reset. And you won't be watching it on the news. You'll be living it. Here's the part no one wants to admit, and few even understand. The dollar has no intrinsic value. It's not backed by gold. It's not backed by oil. It's not even backed by production. It's backed by one thing: belief. Your belief. The market's belief. The world's belief that tomorrow, this piece of paper, or this number on a screen, will still mean something. That belief is powerful, but it's also fragile. Economists call it fiat currency, money by decree. It works until it doesn't. Until enough people look around and quietly ask, wait, why is this still worth anything? And history shows what happens next. Look at Weimar Germany in the 1920s, Zimbabwe in the 2000s, Venezuela more recently. Each time, trust evaporated. Prices exploded. Savings became worthless. People with full bank accounts couldn't buy a loaf of bread. Not because of war, not because of disaster, but because trust collapsed and the currency went with it. The shocking truth? The US dollar is not immune. In fact, the only reason this hasn't happened already is because the world hasn't agreed on a replacement yet. But that replacement is coming. Digital currencies, gold-backed trade, central bank networks outside the US system. The future isn't waiting. It's being built quietly, day by day. So ask yourself, what happens when the world no longer needs belief in your currency? What happens when confidence, not cash, is the first to disappear? The fall won't start with panic. It'll start with silence, a pause, a decision, and then the value just won't come back. While most people still carry physical dollars in their wallets or see them reflected in their bank apps, the nature of money itself is quietly transforming. In recent years, central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, have moved from theoretical concepts to real-world trials. China's digital yuan is already being used in cities like Shenzhen and Suzhou. The European Union is testing its digital euro. And in the US, the Federal Reserve has begun early-stage research into what it calls FedNow, a real-time payment infrastructure that could lay the groundwork for a digital dollar. These aren't just upgrades, they're rewrites of the rules. Unlike traditional cash, digital currencies are programmable. They can expire, be restricted by geography, even tied to social or environmental behaviors. Some call it innovation, others control. But either way, it means this: the very idea of money is changing. At the same time, global trade platforms are experimenting with blockchain-based settlements, cutting out the need for dollar conversions entirely. Nations like Russia and Iran are pushing for BRICS-backed reserve systems. Even gold, long dismissed as outdated, is returning to the spotlight as countries like China and India increase their reserves. Financial institutions are watching, adapting, or quietly panicking. Because once these systems mature, there may be no reason to rely on the dollar at all. Not because it failed economically, but because it failed to evolve fast enough. The shift isn't loud. It's not televised, but it's happening in code, in labs, in quiet agreements between central banks. And when it's ready, the world will have a choice. And it may not choose the dollar. Some still believe the dollar will never fall, that its collapse is unthinkable. They argue it's too entrenched, too globally integrated, too big to fail. And there's truth in that. The dollar has weathered wars, recessions, and crises. It's supported generations of retirees. It's helped lift millions into prosperity. For decades, it's been the spine of global stability. But every system has limits, and every solution hides a cost. The price of dollar dominance was dependence. The world built itself around a single currency, and in doing so, created a single point of failure. Some economists say this is just a cycle, that after every storm, the dollar recovers stronger. Others warn that this time is different, that what's breaking isn't the value, it's the belief. Behind closed doors, central banks are diversifying. Behind headlines, trade partners are shifting. Behind every stimulus, every bailout, every temporary solution is a debt that never stops growing. There's even talk of planned de-dollarization, the idea that the US itself may one day pivot toward a digital alternative to reset the system on its own terms. But can trust be reset by the very hand that eroded it? We've reached a moment where both futures feel dangerous. Hold the dollar and risk watching it decay. Leave it behind and face the unknown. Progress gave us global access, instant payments, financial convenience. But it also gave us fragility, exposure, overconfidence. And maybe, just maybe, the real crisis isn't the fall of the dollar. Maybe it's the fact that we never thought it could fall at all. When the dollar stumbles, it's not just markets that shake, it's lives. The moment confidence slips, the ripple is immediate and personal. Retirees wake up to find their pensions cut in half. Grocery prices double in weeks. Medications, once affordable, become luxury items. Home values plummet. Banks freeze international transfers. Travel becomes impossible. And suddenly, the world feels smaller and more dangerous. The scientific community suffers too. Grants disappear. Research halts. International cooperation built on the ease of dollar-based trade fragments. Crucial projects in climate science, space exploration, and medicine stall. Funding dries up. Innovation slows. Progress, once taken for granted, stalls in silence. On the global stage, alliances fracture. Nations scramble for alternatives, new trade blocs, regional currencies, digital experiments. But none of them scale fast enough. Chaos isn't loud, it's quiet, bureaucratic, deeply human. And for the average person, the most terrifying part isn't what changes, it's what disappears. Stability, predictability, trust. And in that void, new powers emerge. Corporations with private digital currencies. Authoritarian regimes offering security through control. Technologies that don't just track transactions, they monitor behavior. A new financial species is evolving, one that no longer needs permission, regulation, or people. And for those left behind, the world becomes unfamiliar, unforgiving, unrecognizable. This was never just about the dollar. It was about what we built on top of it. And now that foundation is cracking. What rises next may not be built for us. At the heart of this story is a question, not about money, but about choice. The dollar was never just paper. It was a decision, a belief in order, in cooperation, in the promise of tomorrow. But beliefs age. Systems grow brittle. And today, we stand at a crossroads. We can continue on the same path, printing, borrowing, denying, hoping the weight of the past doesn't crush the future. Or we can stop, rethink, evolve. Not just the currency, but the values behind it. What do we want money to be? A tool of control? A measure of trust? A shared agreement? Or a digital leash? The fall of the dollar isn't the end of an economy, it's the end of an era. An era built on assumptions that no longer hold. Infinite debt, endless consumption, unquestioned dominance. And now, the cracks in that illusion demand a response. Will we rebuild with fairness, resilience, and transparency? Or will we patch the old walls and wait for the next collapse? Because this isn't just about financial systems. It's about what we believe makes a society strong, what we choose to preserve, and what we allow to fade. And in that choice lies the true challenge. Not how to save the dollar, but how to save the trust it once represented. That's the decision before us. Not tomorrow, not someday. Now, remember how this began? A quiet morning and a number on a screen that suddenly meant nothing. No warning, no explosion, just a shift, subtle, irreversible. The dollar dropped, and with it, something else collapsed, the illusion that things would always stay the same. I'm not an economist. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just a person, like you, trying to make sense of a world that's changing faster than anyone can explain. And that's what makes this so terrifying. Because deep down, we all feel it. The tension, the silence behind the numbers, the headlines that move on too quickly. We pretend it's fine, because the alternative feels too big to face. But the truth? It's not just a story about money. It's a story about fragility, about how entire civilizations have risen and fallen on the strength of belief, and how quickly that belief can fade. And here's the hardest part to admit: no one's coming to fix it. There is no reset button, no secret plan. Just us, watching, waiting, choosing. So let me ask you, if tomorrow you woke up and your savings were frozen, your dollar's worth half, your retirement gone, what would you do? What would you wish you had done today? Let me know in the comments, not for the algorithm, but because maybe your answer helps someone else. Or maybe it helps you face the question for real. Because this story, it isn't fiction. It's a warning. And the next chapter might be yours.